Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm setting up my bullet journal for February, and this video is a bit late again, so if you have already made your setup for this month, you could always use it for a different one if you want. So I hope you'll enjoy it, and let's get started. Of course, I'm using my bullet journal from Archer and Olive, and I am an affiliate for them, so you can use my code ARTandBoujas for 10% off. I also wanted to show you my flip through from January, as well as feature some of your recreations from Instagram on the side, so thank you to everyone who tagged me. I actually didn't really use my journal in January because I had a lot of assignments for university since it was kind of like the last month of the winter semester. So even though I know it helps me to make my weekly spreads, I just kind of made them afterwards to be able to look back on what I did each week. So I just wanted to remind you that it's perfectly fine not to use your journal every day, and it's also fine to just make spreads afterwards if you still want to include them. I still had one more weekly spread to do for January, and then I'm starting my setup on the next 2 pages. I ended up going for a simple rose theme, so I picked out these 3 colors: a dark green, a light peachy shade, and a muted rose. I also used my trusty black Muji gel pen, as well as my white gel pen from Uni-Ball for any mistakes, and I always write down the products in the description, so make sure to check it out. For the first page, I wanted to make my usual work planner, which is just a little calendar that I use to keep track of tasks and also kind of like my work-life balance. And I used the rose on the top as a background for the weekdays, and then the peachy marker for the dates. And the individual days are 2 grid spaces wide and 3 grid spaces tall. That way I have 4 little boxes that I can fill in with a colored circle, which will represent a different type of work or task, for example YouTube or university. I made the borders in black with a ruler, and then I make a color code underneath, and I picked out 4 markers for YouTube, my freelance job, Instagram, and university. Then to decorate it a bit, I drew some small roses on the left side, and I didn't just color in the shape of a rose, but I tried to kind of emulate petals with the markers, so kind of leaving some spaces empty, which I thought made them look a little bit more natural. I also added some leaves with a dark green, which I thought was a really nice contrast to the lighter colors, and you could honestly just leave it like that. I think it actually looks really cute, but I did go in with a black gel pen to draw some details and outlines. I struggled a bit with coming up with a theme this month because I didn't feel particularly creative, and initially I wanted to do carnations for February, but I found it super hard to simplify them so that they fit my style, and I ended up just scrapping that idea and did roses instead, which I guess is fitting for Valentine's Day. But anyway, underneath the calendar I also added my usual trackers for YouTube and Instagram, and I used the rosy shade again for the titles, and I made the borders in black, which looking back now I might go over them with a dark green here because I ended up using it for some borders later on. To finish the page, I drew another small rose next to the trackers, and I also drew some little stars here and there with a dark green if there were any weird gaps. And then lastly, I also forgot to cross out the days from January and March in the calendar, so I just used the dark green for that. For the cover page, I really wanted to do a wreath design because I haven't done one in so long, and I thought roses would be perfect. So I started by drawing 2 larger roses on the bottom left of the circle, and then I added 2 leaves for each of the roses. Then I started drawing the details, and for the roses I always start in the center and make a little like swirl, and then I add the petal shapes all around it, which I feel like just makes it a bit easier to draw them. The petals don't have to be perfect whatsoever, you can just kind of make them a bit squiggly and irregular, because I think it makes the roses look more natural. For the leaves I just drew the outlines and then added some veins, so just super simple and quick. Then I also added some stems following the circle but not going all around, if that makes sense, so I left quite a big gap on the top right. Here I'm again using the black gel pen to outline them and give them a little bit of detail. Again, you don't have to follow the shape exactly, and I love these kind of doodles because you don't have to be super careful, and that way they also don't take so long. I added just a few stars, and then for the title I kept it pretty simple and just used the rosy shade as a background for February, and then the peachy marker for the number of the month, so 02 underneath because I wanted to fill out the circle a bit more vertically. Lastly, I extended the shape of the circle a little bit more with the dark green, and I also made some of the lines for the title a bit thicker because I felt like it didn't stand out enough from the background. And that's it for these first 2 pages, so let's move on to my habit trackers. I placed the title in the middle of the page and I used the rose shade again for the background. What I like to do to make sure it's actually centered is using the grid as a guide so that each letter fits into one of the grid spaces, and this way I can just kind of count out where it needs to be placed. On the left and right side I drew some more roses and those leaves like before, and I really like the way this looks because it's kind of like a border and I feel like it makes the page look nice and clean. I used the peachy marker for the roses here because I wanted to alternate between the 2 shades, and then I used the black gel pen again for the details. Then I also added the little stars, and I tried something with the title but I didn't like it, so I covered it up later with the white gel pen. Now for anyone new to my channel, I like to not only include daily habits, but also some weekly habits, so first I'm making 6 daily habit trackers and I left some space in the middle for a quote and some more doodles. I actually got inspired by a post I was tagged in, and I thought those trackers looked super pretty, but I think it worked a lot better with their colors, so I'm not super happy with how I did mine. But anyway, instead of making a box for the days of February like I usually do, they used the markers as a background for the weeks, and then made little crosses to fill out the trackers. I wanted to alternate the colors again, but I think it doesn't work as well here for some reason, but I do really like the concept, so I might try it for another setup in the future. Anyway, I wrote down all of my habits, which are doing my morning routine, working out, planning my day in my bullet journal, not going on my phone in the morning, doing some sort of art practice, and lastly doing my nighttime routine. Then for the middle part, I wanted to write a little reminder which says be kind to yourself, and then I drew a bunch more roses on the top and the bottom. I think because I tend to add more doodles, this page ended up looking a bit too full with the trackers, so I might even change them, but I wanted to just leave it for now, so tell me what you think in the comments. I also wanted to mention, because I made this whole setup a bit later than usual, I wanted to just go for something super simple and quick because I didn't have that much time to think of a more interesting layout, so I hope you guys don't mind. In the end, I do think this setup turned out pretty cute, even though it's probably not my favorite theme, but that's okay. I also want to work on not putting so much pressure on myself to create something super new or constantly improve the way I'm making my spreads, because at the end of the day, that's not really the point of bullet journaling. So again, let me know if you have any thoughts on that topic in the comments. To finish off the middle section, I added a border with a dark green, and I ended up using it for the borders for any other sections too, so again, maybe I'll go back and change it on the first page as well. Then I just crossed out the blank days in my trackers because I felt like they needed some more of the darker tones. Underneath I added 3 weekly habits, so I used the 2 light markers for the backgrounds, and this month I included making my weekly spreads, having a self-care day, and doing a little weekly reset so that I'm ready to start a new week. Then I added 5 little circles for each of the weeks so that I can color them in once I complete the habits, and then I also filled the empty space with just some lines, which turned out a bit wobbly, so I guess I should have used a ruler, but oh well. Since there was a bit more space on the bottom, I just drew some more roses, which also balances out the page with the title. And then moving on to the next page, I did want to include my Instagram planner, even though I have not really posted anything in January, but I do want to post again this month. With Instagram, to be honest, it's just not really a priority for me, and I'm not sure why, but even though I had my photos ready to post, I don't really enjoy posting on Instagram as much, and I also never really know what to put in the caption and stuff. I also feel like I worry too much about which post will come next, like how it will look in my feed, because I had a very clear structure for a while, but it's honestly a bit of a hassle to keep up, so maybe I just need to try something different. In any case, I decided to include this planner anyway, and I just make a simple section that is divided into 3 columns. The first is where I write down what the post will be, the second is for when I plan to post it, and the last is to track my progress, so that's why I make this color code on the top. I basically color in each of the circles in the last column whenever I finish a step like making the spread, taking photos, editing them, and then posting on Instagram. This just helps me to visualize what I still need to do for each post, and it does help me to stay consistent when I actually use it. Underneath, I wanted to add some sections to plan out any monthly tasks, so first I made a title in the same style as before, just to have some visual separation from the Instagram section. I decided to make 3 sections, 2 smaller ones on the left and a bigger one on the right, and I used the peachy marker as a background for the titles. I made one for priorities, so things I definitely need to do this month, one for just general tasks, and then one for YouTube where I can brainstorm ideas for my next video. I also decorated them a bit by drawing a small rose in the lower right corner of each section. Then I used the dark green again for the borders, and I left out the part with the roses, which I like to do a lot because it breaks up the boxes a bit and makes the sections look more interesting. Alright, and that's it for these 2 pages, so let's go ahead and make the first weekly spread of the month. Like I mentioned earlier, I wanted to keep things super simple for this video, so I was kind of lazy with this weekly spread as well, but I still think it turned out cute. So first I made a mini calendar in the top left corner. Then I placed my daily sections in the middle of the spread so that there is some space around them on the sides. With my bullet journal, the sections are 16 grid spaces wide and 8 grid spaces tall with 1 space of border all around, and also 1 space in between the sections vertically. For the titles, I alternated between the 2 light markers again, and then I wrote the weekdays as well as the dates in black. I feel like you could definitely make this spread look a bit nicer with some interesting lettering, but again, I just wanted something quick and easy, so I went for my usual kind of hand lettering font. Then I used the dark green again for the borders of the sections, and I left out the top part because the title already functions as a border, and this way you have a bit more planning space. I also drew a little star in the lower right corner again, just to make the sections a bit more interesting, and then on the left side I added some roses underneath the mini calendar. I really like this layout and I use it a lot because you can either fill the sides completely with doodles or you can include some smaller sections, so I feel like it's very versatile, and I also think it looks super cute if the sides are filled with doodles. This time I decided to add a small section for priorities again because I like knowing what I really need to get done each week, and the other tasks are usually less important or urgent. Then I just filled the space underneath with more roses, and I drew this kind of cluster which I think works really well with the roses, and it's also super easy to fill different spots. On the right page there was some space for another section, so I wanted to make one for things I need to do the following week. I just kept the style the same as for the weekdays, and then I didn't feel like I would need any other sections, so I just filled the right side completely with doodles. First I drew another cluster of 3 roses in the middle, and then I added 2 stems with leaves on the top and the bottom because I felt like only roses would be a bit much, and I think it turned out pretty cute, so definitely let me know what you think and which page was your favorite. I think for me it's probably the cover page. Also leave me a comment if you have any ideas for themes you would like to see me make in the future. I always love reading your comments. And that is it for the setup, so let's do a little flip through. Now, even though I didn't feel super creative and I struggled a little bit with this theme, I think it still turned out pretty, so I really hope you guys enjoyed this video as well, and maybe it gave you some new ideas or inspiration for your own bullet journal. Of course, if you like my videos, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Now that the semester is over, I can definitely make my next video on time again. So yeah, thank you guys for watching as always, and I hope I'll see you again next time. Bye!